Placeholders feel demotivating. If I work on a project and add something in, you usually start with a gray box or some kind of placeholder. Every time you look at that placeholder, it just feels more and more demotivating. Like there's a bunch of work piling up behind you and there's not nearly enough time to make all this. For example, in a small game project of mine, I have a gray box. And that box is supposed to be a shopkeeper. Now, if you would ask how long this placeholder has been inside of that project, you would think, oh yeah, it's probably a few weeks or a month. But to be honest, it has been there since April. And it wouldn't even take that much time to model since it's low poly. And every few weeks I open the project and I look at it. And I think this isn't the week I want to learn how to model humans. So how long is it going to be there and how do you overcome this problem? It's not a single instance as well. The more time you spend making prototypes and projects, the more of those placeholders you will get. Even if the modeling skills are not the problem, I can model, I can use Blender, I can even 3D model cars, but there are other categories in modeling that take a bunch of more time, especially for living things and not objects like cars. But we live in the age of technology and ethics. I want to show you how you can benefit from these technologies without sacrificing any ethics. If we come back to the shopkeeper, I can probably sculpt that in Blender and I would probably also get a good shape out of it. And if I couldn't, I would buy one from a marketplace. If shape isn't your problem, then there are other problems. And those problems cost you a bunch of time for something you might not even keep in your full game. After shaping, you have something called retopology. So a 3D model is a surface made out of flat faces. And when you sculpt something or you generate a model, what comes out is a huge pile of triangles. And that depends on the software you use. And even though it looks good, it's really imperformant. Retopology is building a second surface on top of the first one by hand with the faces laid out on purpose. So you place a quad, which is basically a rectangle, and then you do that for the whole model. And that includes the rings around the elbows, the knees, and the mouth. And those parts need to be animated. And it's the reason modeling is so difficult and takes so much time. And while you're doing all that, you also need to take into account what happens when you bend an elbow or a knee. Limbs need to be modeled, so if they're animated, they still look good. The quads need to be compressed correctly and evenly, and later it gets triangulated, and a triangle is the flattest face you can make. And that introduces pinching, so you get a crease where there shouldn't be one, or in worst cases even a spike coming out of a limb or a shoulder. If I would sculpt my shopkeeper, I still need to spend the rest of the day retopologizing, or even more days, and that only for a placeholder. And that's time I haven't got. And this is why this video is sponsored by Tripo3D, and specifically the model they're launching, which is Smart Mesh 2D. And the reason I said yes is because most 3D modeling tools hand you triangles and then run a second pass over it to turn that into quads. But they made a small and interesting claim, which is that they do something different. Their model Smart Mesh 2D generates quad topology directly, for the first time, and not with turning triangles into quads. And their line for this is production-ready 3D assets, rapidly generated. So if that claim holds, you don't need to spend all the time retopologizing it. But if it only looks like quads, you will find it out 3 weeks later if you have already rigged it and tried to animate it. So a quick version of the thing. You can feed it text, 1 image, 4 images from different angles, or a batch of images. And there's a topology setting with 2 options, either quad or triangle. And importantly, those are 2 different things. Quad tops out at 25,000 faces, and it's for anything that has to bend, so characters and anything that you will need to rig. And then you have triangle, which goes to 50,000, and it's for the complicated stuff that doesn't move. So the 5,000 sitting on the slider when you first open it is just the beginning. Quad is the new one, the one I want to talk about and the reason why I make this video. And one thing is worth knowing before you go and try it. On a free account you get 2 Smart Mesh 2D generations, but you can't export the results. And the older Smart Mesh model is fully free, so exporting the quad meshes I'm about to show you to test requires the Pro plan. There's a link in the description to sign up for Tripo and get 500 bonus credits, or if you would rather go to the site directly, my invite code is on screen right now if you would rather type it yourself, but the link already has that, so you don't need to do both. And the discount code TripoCrew in all caps gets you your first month of Pro 60% off, which is under $8, and that unlocks everything including the export. So what did I actually test? And for that I actually went straight to the most difficult problem, which is not the props, so not anything like a crate those are not really the question because a prop never needs to bend. The engine would triangulate it anyway. So the interesting question is entirely in the things that move. So to test that, I asked for my shopkeeper from a text prompt with quad topology, poly count left at 5000, and the most important toggle, the T-pose. That means the model has the arms straight out to the sides, and it's the most common pose a rig wants. And going from text, that takes about a minute to run, by the way. The character said 88 seconds and took somewhere between 90 and 110. The stall I generated ran up to about a minute. And the lantern just took under 2 minutes. So 1 or 2 minutes every time, but I never got near the 5 seconds Tripo quoted me for, which annoyed me a bit, and I asked them why this was happening, and they said I should try from an image directly, and then I worked out why my numbers were so far off, which is that text needs to become an image before it actually gets generated into mesh. So I was basically measuring 2 different steps and comparing that to only one. So if you give it an image directly, you can skip that first step, and that's where you get 5 seconds out of model generation. Here's what came out. 5,463 faces. And yes, recording that took me a bunch of tries, but the numbers are important because you can test it. A triangle mesh gets you roughly twice as many faces as vertices. On a quad mesh, those numbers are almost identically, which is exactly what we wanted to happen. So on the first glance, everything looked alright. The wireframe looked good as well, with clean rings running around the arms and torso and even spacing, the kind of things you would usually expect from someone who sat down and made it. But the wireframe itself doesn't prove anything. The mesh still needs to be rigged and bent. And for that, they have a solution as well to test it. You just press auto rig, which is one button, and then it worked out on its own that it was looking at a human and it put a skeleton in, which took less than half a minute, which I did not expect to work for the first time because auto rigging has wasted so many of my evenings, more than any other single thing in this hobby. And one thing is worth noticing here. When I did that, the face count went from 5,500 to 10,000, and the vertex count didn't change. So basically the rig triangulated the quads, which is normal, and the quads are not for the engine, but they were specifically made to work with deformation. And then I picked out a boxing animation because I wanted the elbows past 90 degrees and I wanted them to be there fast. And the elbow works, no pinch, no spike. I had marketplace models which were retopologized by a human, which behaved worse than this. And I'll admit I wasn't expecting it to be different here. And another really interesting thing is that if you orbit around the model, you can see that the model actually generated really good hands, which is something I wouldn't expect because not even image generators could do this well a while before this. Which leaves us with a better question. If they have fingers, can they move? So I tried to put a waving animation in and turned on the skeleton. And there I could see that the bone chain runs down from the shoulder and then it stops inside the wrist. Past that there is a hand with 5 fingers and none of them rigged. So the mesh has fingers and the rig does not, which means the shopkeeper can wave but he can't grip the thing he wants to sell you, which honestly is a real limitation, and it's the opposite of the one I thought I would have because it's in the rigging and not the geometry. But it's worth separating the two, because they are different features. Smart Mesh made the mesh and the mesh had 5 fingers. Auto Rig is a separate step and it runs after it, and it doesn't build the finger bones at all right now. But that's the cheaper half. Adding finger bones takes about 5 minutes to make. Even Mixamo does it for you. Modeling a hand is the real difficult part you don't want to have. So you're getting a better mesh than rigging, and the rig is the part you need to adjust a bit yourself. But can they replace artists with AI then? And quite honestly, no they cannot, because it gave me geometry, but it didn't give me a silhouette that you can read from a block out or a call of what 4 versions are right. You still need to make those decisions, and if they are bad you still need artists. But what it takes away is the hours that you need to decide what the model should kind of look like and have the thing. And that is the really important thing, it's worth paying for. It's a completely different activity from designing. And I would be lying to you if I would say this isn't important. Personally, I would mainly use it for the blockout layer, the placeholders, everything that's sitting in projects in a gray box that will still be gray at Christmas. Now you can generate it this week, drop it in. It's not going to be final, but you will have a rough idea of what it should look like, which is the thing a blockout level out of cubes just cannot do. And if you want to try the short version of everything I just did, generate one character in a T-pose, check that the face count and the vertex count are closely together, because that's an easy quad test, and Then you auto rig it, bend an arm past 90 degrees and look at the elbows. That only takes 15 minutes and it answers the only question that actually matters about the tool in this category, including the ones I haven't tried yet. The placeholder that has been sitting there for months is not that the reason is a skill issue. It's simply because it's the boring middle part of game development, which feels too long to sit through for something I wasn't sure worked or I would keep in my game. That is the part you don't need to spend hours on anymore. But deciding isn't, and neither is taste. If you want to give it a go, there's a link in the description and pinned comment to sign up for Tripo and get 500 bonus credits, or the code on screen right now if you would rather type it yourself. Tripo Crew in all caps gets you the first month of Pro at 60% off, so under $8, and that is the tier that lets you export it. Going through the link helps paying videos like this one, and Tripo is at Gamescom this year as well, at Hall 10.1, stand A040. And they're there for the 26th to 13th. And I'm going there on Friday to record a conversation with them and ask them a few questions with somebody from their product team about the stuff that's actually complicated and which breaks, which is one of the next videos. So in the comments, tell me which asset in your project is still a placeholder. Like mine, that's the shopkeeper. And now you know how to prototype faster, and then go replace the placeholder, bend an arm, and with that, I hope I'll see you in the next one.